All right, good morning. We are today on the fifth of our week-long Protective Factors series. So I see many of the familiar faces that we have seen all week. So thanks so much for being here. And if this is your first one this week, welcome. We're glad to have you with us. They will all be available on our YouTube channel. We'll send out that link once we get them uploaded so that you can pass them along or watch them again, whatever might benefit you and those that work with you. So if you've been here all week, you know we like to give credit where credit is due so that we know where this information is coming from. So the Strengthening Families approach and Protective Factors framework was introduced in 2003 by the Center for the Study of Social Policy. It's research and informed, strength-based approach that prevents child abuse and neglect by focusing on the well-being of all families and helping families to identify and build on their own protective factors. The Doris Duke Charitable Foundation funded the original research and also funded the Alliance to engage its networks of children's trust and prevention funds to demonstrate unique and innovative ways to implement the protective factors framework. Each of the protective factors is essential, but most important is what they do together to build strength and stability in families. My name is Sarah Sarelson, and I am the Executive Director of the Wyoming Children's Trust Fund and Prevent Child Abuse Wyoming. This is my most favorite question. What is your favorite game? And if you've played along all week, you know that we're going to ask you to put your name, where in Wyoming that you work, and what your favorite game is into the chat box. So I'll give you just a moment to think about that while I tell you that my favorite game is Connect 4. I have a very little version of Connect 4, little tiny one. I like the big, huge version. Connect 4 is something that I take with me when I travel with my family on airplanes. It is the game I love to do. And it, I think, sometimes annoys people around me because I like it so much. But I'll let my co-presenter introduce herself.
Thanks, Sarah. I'm Nicole Nieder. I'm the Business Office Coordinator at the Trust Fund. My favorite games are card games. So my family, my immediate family, my extended family, we play a lot of canasta. And I also love the 5 Crowns game, the Phase 10, all of those kind of card games. Those are some of my favorites.
Thank you, Nicole. And I see some good ones in the chat box here. Twister, Farkle, Phase 10, absolutely. Very, very good games. And Monopoly. Yes, Monopoly is a good one. Thanks so much for playing along this morning. We're so glad that you are here. The Strengthening Families Protective Factors Framework is not another program to add to your agency's to-do list. It doesn't come with detailed instructions for implementation. It's a different approach for working with families that can be interpreted and applied in a variety of settings. In most cases, the Strengthening Families is implemented through a series of small but significant changes to our daily practice rather than any large-scale program modifications. So today we're talking about social and emotional competence of children. So these are the family and child interactions that help children to develop the ability to communicate early, recognize and regulate their emotions, and establish and maintain relationships. For parents, this looks like warm and consistent responses that foster a strong and secure attachment with their child. It's the encouragement and reinforcement of social skills and setting of limits. For the child, this is then demonstrating age-appropriate self-regulation, the ability to form and maintain relationships with others, the positive interactions that they have with others, both adults and children, and effective communication at developmentally appropriate stages. Children with a strong foundation in emotional vocabulary tolerate frustration better. They get into fewer fights. They engage in less destructive behavior. They're healthier, less lonely, less impulsive, more focused, and have greater academic achievement. These skills and this development is really important to children. This protective factor is the only one of the 5 in the Strengthening Families Protective Factors framework that addresses issues with children. The other protective factors, as you know, because many of you have been here all week, are intended to speak to parents and offer suggestions and strategies for how they can strengthen their families. This protective factor addresses the importance of helping children become more capable of handling life's challenges, socially and emotionally, as they grow. Children's social and emotional competence is seen in their ability to communicate early, to recognize and regulate their emotions, to establish and maintain relationships, and to engage in the problem solving and that conflict resolution. These competencies emerge gradually as a natural developmental process. Children who have these skills are likely to grow up to have healthier behaviors, better peer relationships, and have a higher capacity to respond to stress. Helping children to develop these skills can also improve family relationships and prevents abuse and neglect. When parent-child relationships are mutually rewarding, there's a greater enjoyment, increased responsiveness, and decreased likelihood of maltreatment. 0 to 3 defines social emotional competence as the developing capacity to experience and regulate emotions, form secure relationships, and explore and learn, all in the context of the child's family, community, and cultural backgrounds. So I'll throw out a question to those of you that are here this morning. Why is it important for children to become socially and emotionally healthy? We're a small group, so if you feel like coming off of mute, I would definitely appreciate that. But you, of course, can put your answer also in the chat box. So why is it important for children to become socially and emotionally healthy?
I'll share. It's important because it helps them digest and feel emotion so that it doesn't like get held and trapped in their body, and also so that they can actually interact with other people. So as we age, if we don't learn this competence, then we struggle having relationships. We struggle keeping relationships. We also struggle with boundaries. So yeah, I think that's why it's important.
That was great, Tilly. Anybody want to add on? This is really at the heart of the work that is being done around children and families. So why is it so important for children to become socially and emotionally healthy? What comes to mind for you?
Hey, Sarah, it's Maria.
Hi, Maria.
I think one of the things that I think of when I think of children needing to be socially and emotionally healthy is really just fostering the ability to be resilient and to get through, like have a reserve to be able to get through all the challenges in life. Like we are not always going to be there to help them, and they have to go out, they have to like launch someday, right? They have to go out into the world. And so the more that we provide them at home when they're in their intact family unit, the better equipped they will be to go out into the world and then equip their children and then their children's children. And so it really is a cycle, and we have to do our part in the cycle so they can do their part in it.
Great, thank you. I see a couple more in the chat box. Great foundation for adolescence and adulthood. Think of social emotional development as a foundation for the rest of a child's growth and development. We talked earlier this week about child development and knowledge of parenting, and how all of those pieces are really on top of this foundation of social and emotional and attachment and the nurturing pieces. And so this is the foundation of being able to then provide all of those other necessary components for kids and parents to be okay. Anything else come to mind about why it's important for children to become socially and emotionally healthy? Those were all great examples. So children who have these skills are likely to grow up, have healthy behaviors, better peer relationships, a higher capacity to respond to stress. And you all in your roles are helping children to develop these skills. It also then helps those family relationships. We know that this makes a difference in how families interact with one another, how children interact with each other. And so when Tilly talked about that physiological change that happens when you have the emotions in your body and how you hold on to those pieces, we know that that affects then later development. We also know that culture plays a big role in social and emotional development. Behavior and expression of emotion vary widely with a child's developmental stage and temperament. And while some aspects of social and emotional development can be changed by our cultural experiences, emotion expression is largely influenced by parental and family expectations. So it includes those culturally based values and goals for children. Every child has an individual temperament or way of approaching and reacting to the world. If you have had experience, and I think everyone has had experience with multiple children, you know they're all a little bit different. Temperament is biologically based and appears to be fairly stable throughout life. Some children are cheerful and adaptable and easily develop regular routines of things like sleeping and walking and eating and other daily activities that start in infancy. These children tend to respond positively to new situations. Other children, from the very beginning, are not very adaptable and may not establish routines easily. These children tend to respond negatively to new situations and changes in any routines they have. And most children fall between these two extremes. In addition to age differences, culture also plays a predominant role in how families approach their children's social and emotional development. So, understanding those cultural expectations at each level is an important part of promoting healthy social and emotional development. So, this video was created by the Center for the Early Childhood Education at Eastern Connecticut State University. It's called Learning About a Family's Culture. We'll watch it. It's just a couple minutes.
I would encourage educators to not only ask parents about their children or their own personal family culture, but be willing and open to hear from them. Develop an environment, foster an environment where parents feel comfortable enough to share with you, because our children come from backgrounds that may or may not look like your own. Let's say the children in your classroom are from a different side of town from where you are, but you haven't exposed yourself to that environment or that culture. I encourage teachers to go to the restaurants in that neighborhood, to go to, the movie theater, whatever it is in that area, so that they can immerse themselves in someone else's culture, and not always expecting the parents or the students to be immersed into our own culture, but just take the time to look to see, what are the differences, what are the special things that make that child who he or she is. I had a young child in my classroom, and she never made eye contact with me. And as a young teacher, I thought, wow, she's not being very respectful. Look at me. But I took a step back and I looked at who she was. Where did she come from? And what were the cultural practices within her family? And then I invited her mother in. It was at that point that I realized that she didn't give her mother eye contact. And that was a cultural piece, because it was a sign of respect that she didn't look her mother eye to eye. And here I am as the teacher forcing her, look me in my eyes when you talk to me. So we need to find that balance between what are the expectations in the household and what are the greater expectations within our school and in our society, and not try to change our students to have them belittle their own culture, but value both of them at the same time.
So as you think about cultural expressions that could be misinterpreted or have been misinterpreted, do any examples come to mind of things that sometimes think is one thing and then find out is another, or have you had this experience? Anybody willing to share what some of those examples might be? Eye contact, shaking hands, responsiveness to conversations. Absolutely. And then do you have suggestions or ideas of how you could learn more about a family and their culture? Responding when I speak to them. So when you get to know a family, what are some things that can be done to help you better understand their culture? Family nights, just spending time with them, right? Seeing how they interact, what it is that they're doing. Asking questions, absolutely. We talk a lot about coming from a place of curiosity. Asking about traditions, values, things I should know. Letting them tell you what's important to them, right? So, physical developmental milestones are often what parents focus on related to young children's development. We talk about, are they meeting these milestones? And these are really important. The early years of a child's life also includes other kinds of developmental milestones and stages, social and emotional ones. These can be challenging to track or identify because they often involve things such as increased self awareness. It's sometimes hard for parents and practitioners to observe these skills in children. Anybody have any insight or experience with having conversations with parents about social and emotional development, either at young stages or older stages? Any words of wisdom that you have learned along the way? I love the parent suggestion box. How are you helping parents to know about social emotional milestones?
Sarah, this is Deborah. I don't know. I instead of typing all this in, I think sometimes we have the opportunity to actually just sit on the floor with the parents and play with the children as we're observing how they're interacting with the child and how the child's interacting with them and having those conversations. Just, getting down on their level and really just kind of observing it and having that conversation with them.
Great. Thank you, Deborah. lead parent conversation series where we present a topic, allow them to share, ask them what works and what doesn't. Absolutely. Leaning into their expertise as parents, right? And acknowledging that they're living this and that they know.
Hey, Sarah, it's Maria again. And I don't know necessarily that I have anything to offer as a professional. I mean, I'm sure I do, but like what comes to mind is being a parent receiving that guidance or that input. And I think some of the things that helped me in talking to the home visitors that we had was like putting things in a very relatable frame. Like I remember when my oldest was little and he like really, really little, like a few weeks old, and he was always crying, but he had a really bad day one day. And I was like, what did I do? Like, where did I go wrong? What did I do? And she said, you know, everybody has bad days sometimes. And that just like, I think it's easy to see babies as like different kinds of people. And then they are, in a lot of ways they are, but it was very helpful to be like, oh yeah, like I don't have a good day every day. We all wake up on the wrong side of the bed. So that approach of just being very like relatable to my experience as a human being as well, I found that really, really comforting.
Yeah, what a great example of making it real, right? Instead of being clinical and really trying to dive into, you know, what in the world is happening, just that we all have a bad day. That's such a great example. So each stage in Erickson's theory builds on the preceding stages and paves the way for following periods of development. So in each stage, Eric believes people experience a conflict that serves as that turning point in development. These conflicts are centered on either developing a psychological quality or failing to develop that quality. So during these times, the potential for personal growth is high, but so is the potential for failure. If people successfully deal with the conflict, they emerge from the stage with psychological strengths that will serve them well for the rest of their lives. If they fail to deal effectively with these conflicts, they may not develop the essential skills needed for a strong self. And when I think of the stages of development and I think of toddlers, they are such a great example of being able to have that persistence of, you know, whether they are learning to walk or they are learning to share with others or they're playing next to each other or all of that experiences that they have that we talked about earlier this week through play is where all of these pieces of development then are able to be established and they get to practice it over and over and over while they are building these skills. So every child, as we talked about, has individual temperament or ways of approaching, and really every person, right? Not just children, of ways of approaching and reacting to the world. We know that temperament is biologically based and appears to be fairly stable. And if, as research has shown, temperament is well established by age 5, many of the characteristics that we refer to in the social emotional category, so empathy, communication skills, become very, very important. All right, so we're going to look at temperament traits. I have a poll here that I want you to select the characteristics that you feel describe you. There's a list here. You might have to scroll down to see the rest of the list, but it should have just launched. I'll give you just a moment to read through those, select which ones of those describe you. All right, I'll give you another few seconds for anybody that wants to finish up, and then I will show you what we look like as a group and what our characteristics are. All right. So as you can see, some of us move our feet and are always moving. A bigger number, generally happy. There's a couple of us who like to eat and go to bed at the same time every day. More, though, that don't like tight or itchy clothes, although that's the same amount who can sit and read for hours. We have an impatient person. Half of those who responded like plenty of alone time. Just a couple like to watch a while before joining an activity. We have just 3 who are on the go all day long. And we have 1 person who will drop what they're doing to do something else. So as you can see in this group, we also all have different characteristics and traits and have had a wealth of experiences that have developed who we are. But most of those things have probably remained the same throughout our entire life. Babies who are very, very active are often toddlers who are active, and then young children who are active, and then teenagers who never stop moving, and then our adults who are that way. People will say they were that way from the moment they came out, or even before then. Some say, well, they were kicking the whole time that they were in. And so those are the personality traits that are often very different. So when we're talking about temperament traits and characteristics of our children, it's important to think about how these are traits that define who they are. So it's not something that we are trying to correct or change or want them to be anything different, but it does sometimes take different skills in parenting and educators to be able to address all of the different characteristics in a group, right? So some of us in this group, even, we are willing to take ourselves off of mute and be more of the person that's willing to do that. Other people in this group are not. And it's just based on different personalities and different temperament traits that we have as people. And we need all of us to be able to make sure that everybody is doing all of the things. So I want to look at a couple of these a little bit closer. So activity levels. So this is a child's idle speed, or how active the child is generally. So this talks about, does the infant always wiggle or squirm? Are they difficult to diaper because they flip over, right? We hear about they're made into a little burrito when they roll all around. Or how about distractibility? The degree of concentration and paying attention, or intensity, the energy level of a response, whether positive or negative. Do they have a lot of energy no matter what they are doing? Sensory threshold. So this is how sensitive the child is to physical stimuli. Approach or withdrawal refers to a child's characteristics response to a new situation or strangers. Does the child eagerly approach new situations or people? Does the child seem hesitant and resistant when faced with new situations? Are they slow to warm up? Adaptability. It's related to how easily the child adapts to transitions and changes, like switching to a new activity. Does the child have difficulty with changes in routines or transitions from one activity to another? Persistence. This is the length of time a child continues an activity in the face of obstacles. Does the child continue to work on a puzzle when he's had difficulty with it? Or does he just move on to another activity and say, I'm done with this? And then mood. This is the tendency to react to the world primarily in a positive or negative way. Does the child see the glass as half full? Does he focus on the positive aspects of life? Is the child generally in a happy mood? Or does he see it as half empty and tend to focus on negative aspects in life? Is this child generally serious? Serious children tend to be analytical and evaluate situations very carefully. They're the processors. And of course, we need them to have those traits as they're getting older and as we have balanced groups of people who are doing things. Anybody have examples either of yourself or of children that you've worked with that where you see these personality differences? If you are a parent of multiple children, you might have an example of how this has come in different ways in different children. What comes to mind when you think of children or adults who are different? Is this true? Maybe this is not true. What's your experience been? I'm going to make sure everybody has time to get their response typed up. My niece, who is sensitive to sensory stuff, she sees the world as glass half full, intense and very sensitive. Great example. Yeah, I think in our mind, we can all think of people either that we have raised or that we know or that we work with, right? Who fall in a variety of these different buckets. And that just is the person that we all are. Adults in her life trying to change, which is hard to watch. Absolutely. And probably close to impossible, right? It's about impossible to change someone's temperament.
Relationships with parents are the foundation on which a child's social and emotional competence is built. Research has shown us that nurturing and bonding between parent and child from the earliest possible time results in children who are more socially and emotionally competent as children, and this leads to later on as adults. A child's social and emotional competence can both reflect and affect his or her relationship with family members or the situation that's in the home. So reflect is children and families experiencing risk factors such as parental substance abuse, mental health challenges, domestic violence struggles with aggression, anxiety, depression, and hyperactivity at rates 2 to 3 times that of children not experiencing those risk factors. Who have experienced maltreatment, witnessed violence, or suffered a traumatic loss, such as the death of a parent, will often act out, sometimes in ways that don't appear to be related to what they've experienced. Affect, the child's social and emotional competence, also influences his or her relationships with caregivers, siblings, and peers. Negative side of this is most obvious when we look at children with those out of control behaviors. It takes a strong, knowledgeable, and committed parent or caregiver that can stay calm in the face of these persistent, challenging behaviors. Particularly when parents or caregivers are facing other stresses and challenges, a child's acting out might cause them to react in a frustrated or irritated way. And unfortunately, this does nothing to address the actual issue and can give the child the message that they are bad or unlovable. These stressors can even push parents over the edge into abusive or neglectful responses.
Babies this young are extremely responsive to the emotions and the reactivity and the social interaction that they get from the world around them. This is something that we started studying 30, 40 years ago, when people didn't think that infants could engage in social interaction. In the still face experiment, what the mother did was she sits down and she's playing with her baby who's about a year of age.
I'm like a girl.
Oh,
And she gives a greeting to the baby gives a greeting back to her.
yes.
This baby starts pointing at different places in the world, and the mother's trying to engage her and play with her. They're working to coordinate their emotions and their intentions, what they want to do in the world. And that's really what the baby is used to. And then we ask the mother to not respond to the baby. The baby very quickly picks up on this, and then she uses all of her abilities to try and get the mother back. She smiles at the mother. She points because she's used to the mother looking where she points. The baby puts both hands up in front of her and says, "What's happening here?" She makes that screechy sound at the mother, like, come on, why aren't we doing this? Even in this 2 minutes, when they don't get the normal reaction, they react with negative emotions, they turn away, they feel the stress of it, they actually may lose control of their posture because of the stress that they're experiencing.
Okay. I'm here. And what are you doing? Oh, yes. Oh, what a big girl.
It's a little like the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is that normal stuff that goes on, that we all do with our kids. The bad is when something bad happens, but the infant can overcome it. After all, when you stop the still face, the mother and the baby start to play again. The ugly is when you don't give the child any chance to get back to the good. There's no reparation, and they're stuck in that really ugly situation.
So this still face experiment video illustrates the importance of the parent-child interactions and demonstrates that very young children have a complex social world. As Dr. Tronick speaks about the good, the normal interactions, the bad, when something bad happens, but the infant can overcome it, and the ugly, when the infant isn't given a chance to get back to the good, and the importance of re-engaging with children even when their normal interaction is interrupted by difficult circumstances. Social emotional competence and child maltreatment prevention. This connection between social and emotional competence and child abuse and neglect prevention may not be clear right away, but for the most part, it comes into play when there are problems with the child's social and emotional development or a poor fit between a parent's temperament and that of their child. All children will at times behave in ways that test the patience of their caregivers. Some adults are better able to handle those challenges than others. But when children have persistent, challenging behaviors, or when parents struggle to understand their child's behavior, parents and caregivers can easily run out of the positive and productive tools to use if they aren't given the appropriate support. Developmental delays, emotional disturbances, and other issues may become apparent at any point in a child's life, or they maybe not develop the social and emotional competencies and self-regulation skills emerging in other children around the same age. Some children will act out physically or emotionally, called externalizing behaviors. Other children will withdraw, directing their reaction inward, called internalizing behaviors. Externalizing and internalizing behaviors are both signs that a child needs extra support and that caregivers may need additional tools to take care of that child. Children whose social and emotional development does not seem to be on track may need in-depth developmental assessment to see if the specialized medical, developmental, or mental health help is needed. Providers may be in a position to help families access these types of assessments and services and assure them that they are doing so in the best interest of the child. In this slide, we see the logic model used to indicate how we can build the protective factors. In this case, the strategy we use will be to facilitate children's social and emotional development. There are lots of specific strategies and everyday actions that can be taken to support children as they build stronger social and emotional competence. Provide a nurturing and caring environment. Using a structured curriculum for social and emotional development teaches parents to support that development and respond to challenges, as well as observe and respond to signs that development is not on track. The Center for the Study of Social Policy has identified the following everyday actions that can help support the social and emotional competence of children's protective factor. First is help parents foster their child's social or emotional development. Model that nurturing support to children. Include children's social and emotional development activities in programming. Help children develop a positive cultural identity and interact in a diverse society. And lastly, respond proactively when social or emotional development seems to need support. The course of social emotional development, whether healthy or unhealthy, depends on the quality of nurturing attachment and stimulation that a child experiences. Numerous research studies show that a relationship with a consistent, caring, and attuned adult who actively promotes the development of these dimensions is essential for healthy social and emotional outcomes in young children. A two-pronged approach is helpful. Direct work with children can help them to develop their social and emotional skills. Equally important is working with the parents so they can do the same in their relationships with their children, including responding to the challenging behaviors in productive ways. The pyramid model was developed by the Center on the Social and Emotional Foundations for Early Learning. It shows how facilitating a children's social and emotional development happens at several levels, each of which encompasses work with both children and parents. The Center on Social Emotional Foundations for Early Learning developed that simplified version of the pyramid model. This organization is a national resource center with a wealth of information and evidence-based practices that can be effective in promoting the healthy social and emotional development of children. The illustration on this slide summarizes the full pyramid model and serves as a guide for parents and educators. The different levels of the pyramid are similar to those in the public health model of prevention. Each level relies on a partnership between educators and parents to provide the optimal opportunities for children to develop healthy social and emotional skills. Beginning at the pyramid bottom or the foundation, here are the descriptions of each level. So the bottom is the universal or the primary level. This is a foundational level which stresses the value of positive relationships and supportive environments for all children at home and in school. These nurturing and supportive relationships play a critical role in a child's development. Next is the targeted or the second level. This level is the next phase where we target children who may be at risk of challenging behaviors and where teaching specific curriculum, cooperative play, and social problem solving at home and at school may be an effective approach. Lessons on things like compromise, empathy, and understanding feelings may increase the social and emotional competence of these children. And the third level is the indicated or tertiary level. It addresses a very small percentage of children who have persistent, challenging behaviors. Here, parents and educators may seek outside help from those who are qualified to provide individual and intensive interventions. The teamwork of parents and educators is critical to decrease the behaviors and increase the social emotional skills of these children. Parents, early care, and education providers, and other adults who interact with children can all help them build their emotional vocabulary, which is a critical piece of the social and emotional development. The emotional vocabulary children learn may be more important than the vocabulary words they learn in school. Emotional vocabulary is the ability to recognize, label, and understand feelings in oneself and in others. It's a foundation for children's ability to control their emotions, develop relationships, interact with others, and become effective problem solvers. It's one of the most important areas of development during a child's early years. Children with a strong foundation in emotional vocabulary can tolerate frustration better, they get into fewer fights, they engage in less destructive behavior, they are healthier, are less lonely, are less impulsive, can be more focused, have greater academic achievement. Providers can help children build their emotional vocabulary by talking to them about their emotions and the emotions of others, by reading books and telling stories about characters dealing with strong feelings, as well as helping them to learn strategies to manage their own emotions in appropriate ways. If you work with children who have experienced trauma, helping them to put their emotions into words and showing empathy can be an important first step toward healing. Now, we want you to just think to yourself for a moment. Think about a satisfying relationship in your life. Do you have that relationship, and what makes that relationship satisfying? Now, think about the messages that you received about relationships from your family or in your culture as you were growing up. And think about yourself as a child. Do you behave in your relationships with children the same way important adults behaved with you when you were a child? And now think about what supports are available in your community to help families and children develop healthy social and emotional development. And if you want to come off mute or put it in the chat, we'd love to hear some of the ideas that are happening in your community. So what supports are happening in your community to help families, help children develop those healthy social and emotional development? Or how could you personally help families and children develop those satisfying relationships that in turn then promote those healthy social and emotional development? Okay, Chili, you have to help me out. What is SEL? Social emotional learning? Is that, I just want to make sure I have that correct. Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's great. Do that every Wednesday. That's awesome. Toddler play groups through the Civic and Rec Center, and the library has clubs for all sorts of different age groups. We have an after school program and BOCES program. That's great. Thank you, Rosita. The parent conversations, that is super important as well. Thanks for sharing, Tilly.
For us, it's been like having in our family, it's a faith community and a school community, and, you know, participating in the things. And I think the people on this call who know me well know I would rather not go anywhere and be a part of anything. I'd rather just stay home, but really, like, my children aren't going to have the opportunity to meet those adults outside of our home if we don't go out into the world, unfortunately. So, you know, going to events at school or participating in things at church, that kind of thing, just providing the opportunity to have those adults in those relationships and safe spaces.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Maria. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, you have to have those interactions with other people outside of your immediate family to help develop all of this as well. So Webster's dictionary defines a strategy as a careful plan or method for achieving a particular goal. Usually over a long period of time, parents have an important role in facilitating the social and emotional development of their children. The everyday actions give more details about what this looks like in everyday life.
Social emotional health really forms the basis for all relationships in life. It starts the minute the baby's born, perhaps even before, when they hear their parents talking, when they feel their parents' touch. It gives the child a sense of security, and you can't learn unless you're secure.
So if you think about emotions and emotional development, we all have to have ways to identify what our emotions are and to sort of deal with them or work through them in the way that we need to in order to live productively in whatever society or place we live in. And then the social piece really, again, is about relationship. And so when you put those together, we really need to understand our emotions, and we do that and understand that through a relationship. And so as infants, it really is that first relationship with our primary caregiver, usually our parent, or there's a variety of different caregivers it could be. That parent helps us to understand what we're going through, understand what our bodies are experiencing, and they help us to organize our bodies and help us to understand our emotions.
For social emotional health, we want to make sure that children can recognize their feelings, recognize other people's feelings, so we make sure we talk to children in words that are just like, you seem angry, you seem tired, tell me how you feel, how do you think I feel? We also want to make sure they have consistency and routine in their life, because that lays such a comfortable world for them. When they know routines around bedtime, when they know routines around dinner time, when they know what's going to happen in their life, they can relax and learn.
Well, I think that we have to, as parents, parents have to provide ongoing, nurturing relationships that are responsive. They have to have an understanding of their baby and what their baby's needs are. They have to understand sort of developmentally, so have some idea of development and be able to respond positively to that, ongoing sort of nurturing relationships with their infants. They have to be able to provide consistency and predictability, and those two things really help an infant to feel safe and to know that if I have a need, if I cry, if I have a feeling in my belly that doesn't feel right, and I cry, which is how I communicate because I'm an infant, I know that someone will come, that my parent will come. They'll take care of me, they'll make that feeling, that bad feeling go away, and then I'll be able to feel better. And as children grow up, they sort of take that feeling with them so that they know that if I cry, which is I have a need, and I let someone know that I have that need, then I know that I'm worthy enough for someone to respond to my need and to help me, and then I'm going to feel better, and I'm going to be able to negotiate that need. And as they get bigger and bigger, when we are asking them to go to school without that parent, they can carry that understanding with them and have the understanding that here's my teacher. I know my parent's not here, but I also know that I can trust that adults will help me when I need something. And so they can have that, they have that understanding that someone will help me if I have that need.
The world that the children of today are waking up to each morning is vastly different than it was even just 10 years ago. According to the Center for the Study of Social Policy, Protective and Promotive Factors, research has shown that relationships with consistent, caring, and attuned adults who actively promote the children's social and emotional development are key in assuring optimal outcomes and well-being of children. Although children's primary caregivers may have the best opportunity to nurture children in this way, What is the role of the practitioner in a child or a family serving program? What is the role of the community? Nurturing and promoting children's social and emotional competence requires commitment from everyone in a child's life. And parents that have the resources they need can have stronger families, promote that optimal development in their children, and are less likely to abuse or neglect their children.
I would have to say my old counselor. If it wasn't for her, I would have not learned as many coping things. Dropping your cupcake should not ruin your entire day.
Wyoming Kids Matter.
So the voice in that video was a Wyoming teen, so somebody kind of local to our state. And we just have a one question survey that we'd like you to complete that Sarah just dropped the link to in the chat. Thank you, Sarah. And with that, it concludes this webinar on this social emotional development of children protective factors. And for those of you that were able to join us all week long, we appreciate your time and commitment to learning about all of the protective factors. And we hope you have a great rest of your day.